Welcome to today's ISIS Public Forum on Thai politics. After Yingluck, what's next for Thai politics? We will have opening remarks first from the Dean of the Faculty, Adjunct Dr. Ake Tangsupvattana.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and it is my great pleasure and privilege to open today's ISIS Public Forum on Thai politics after Yingluck with such a distinguished lineup of speakers. On stage, you are seeing the future leader of Thailand. I mean, not now, next. After we eventually hold an election. As you know, former Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatра's absent at her court verdict on 25th August 2017 and her subsequent conviction and a 5-year jail term have become a turning point in Thai politics. Questions about as to how she got away, who helped her, whether the junta and government knew about her escape, who will be the leader of the Pheu Thai party in election campaign, how will Pheu Thai party be without Yingluck, and what will now happen to Yingluck and her Pheu Thai party. Regarding these questions, it seems to me that all political roads now quite lead to an election too, and which may be and also the election may be arranged within next year. These are all important questions, and they will be examined here this morning. Although we would like to be as constructive and as forward-looking as possible. Yingluck's departure from the political scene for the time being impinges on the political party scene and election dynamics more broadly. For the government, Yingluck's exile may be brought near-term stability, but prospects remain murky. Surely there is still be a question whether her leaving is good for our country politics or not, both in short and long terms. Also, will the government still allow election to take place next year, or just announce the date next year and push the actual poll further into the future? Certainly, this will have an impact on Thai democracy development. We are also interested in the scenarios that might emerge after the election in view of the 2017 Constitution. Can Thailand get out of its own political entrapment that has lasted for the last 12 years? What would it take and who would have to do it? Let me thank all speakers, Mr. Phongthep Thepkanjana, former judge and former cabinet minister and senior figure of Pheu Thai party, Mr. Korn Chatikavanij, former minister, finance minister of Thailand between 2008 and 2011, and also the deputy leader of the Democrat Party, Kun Anutin, Charnvirakul, leader of Bhumjaithai Party, and chairman and the president of the Sino-Thai Engineer and Construction PCL. Adjunct Dr. Jade Donavanik, Adjunct Professor at the Division of Law, Kasetsart University, and a former constitution drafter. And now, shall I return the floor to Ajahn Thitanan? Thank you very much.
Look, let me invite the speakers up to the stage, please. Kun Anutin, Kun Korn, Kun Phongthep, and Adjunct Jade. Chen Kap, Chen. We have until 11 o'clock. Kun Korn has a very different, important trip to make, a milestone trip. So we don't want you to be late. Congratulations. And then we have about 20 minutes each for the speakers, and then 30 minutes for the audience. So prepare your questions and comments. 4 speakers, I think we'll go alphabetical. We have 3 senior leaders of 3 main political parties in Thailand. Look, we are concerned about what's happening in Thailand, what will happen. There are lots of questions and issues and challenges and so on. Here, I think what we would like to know, there are some key question marks about political outlook from the different political parties, the role of political parties going forward, the election timetable in view of all that has happened, including the recent trip to Washington. The Constitution will come to you last, Ajahn Jade, about the dynamics of the organic laws, whether it will be delayed or not, and then when we can expect perhaps to have some kind of a poll next year or year after. So, Kun Anutin, could we start with you? Maybe just tell us how you see things, and what are your reactions to some of the things that have happened. What's your outlook now in view of the recent trip to the U.S., in view of the Constitution mechanics, the process of organic law drafting, and all the rest?
Thanks, Dr. Thitanan, and good morning to all. I never expected that we would have this big turnout, and I'll try my best to say and hopefully that I would not be dragged away from the stage. Well, today when we started the topic with Thailand, what happened next after Kun Yingluck, I would rather have a topic of what Thailand will go forward from here, rather than referring to any figure, because Thailand is a country, and a country needs no reference, and no one is indispensable in terms of running the country. The country has to prevail, and anyone who has a capability to serve the country is under the duty to serve. So I just believe that Thailand will continue to go in a better prospect right after this year. The sign of, I would say, a vital sign of the country has significantly been improved despite the regime administrating this country right now. At least we heard our leader saying that within next year he would announce the date of election. Simply understanding, without having anyone coming out to try to translate his statement, we all have to believe that if he said announcement of election is made, so the election that should fall due not long after. Someone has tried to say that he would announce the election date within next year, and try to lead the understanding to be that it could be held in 2025. That could not be the case. If the announcement is made, it has to follow the roadmap. Organic law passing or not passing, someone has to take responsibility. So I believe that when the leader dares saying in the global arena, in front of the, I would say the leader of a superpower country, I think that's the conclusion. Thailand will have election, hopefully within the end of next year. If not, it should be no later than the mid, in my understanding, the mid of 18. I think that the extension could only go that far. If anybody watched the TV program, but unfortunately it was spoken in Thai by the former Speaker of the House, Kun Uthai. I think he gave a very good remark that when the NCPO stepped in, claiming that Thailand was in turmoil and there was the need for a special administration to come into place and quickly solve the problems. A period of 4 years or 5 years is already sufficient for someone to get the problem solved. It cannot, no one can solve the problem taking 5 years. So I think with all the surroundings, all the circumstances, all the need of the people, Thailand has to undergo election. What comes next, we will discuss later, because this is only my introduction. A very good observation that I believe that the Thai people wanted to have the election held. Nobody had to come out and raise voice or making any demand in public. Thai people has already sent a very clear signal to whoever that is responsible for the country right now since August 2016, when we had a referendum on the current charter. The referendum was in favor of the charter, which means they won election. The substance of the charter is, if it only affects if you might have heard many people complain about the charter, it only affected the politician that will run the country at post-election. There would be some kind of body, I call it the Politburo, to overseeing the action or the policy or the management style of the government. That is the headache of the coalition. That is the headache of politicians. But that doesn't affect a business as usual for Thai people. Thai people agree to that referendum with vast majority, I would have to say. Even in the northeastern part of Thailand, even in the southern part of Thailand, many political parties have expressed their views that and try to make people make their fans understand that it wasn't a proper charter, but people in the constituencies which believe that this the constituency in the southern part favor one party, the constituency in the northeastern part or the northern part favor another party, but all the people voted in favor of the charter. I could determine nothing else, but it is the clear signal from the Thai people that they won the election. They want democracy back to their own country, and to me, that is enough for a country like Thailand, that we would know that the people will never, allow some mishaps or any negative consequence to take place after that. Thai people now are very much close to all the medias, close to informations. Nobody can fool. And with things that have happened and taken place for almost 12 years now, we need to hear from the Thai people. And as a political party leader, I am very glad that they have voiced their feelings out. And I now only look forward to the announcement from our leader that hopefully will not take long from now, and prepare ourselves to render the best policy for the next campaign for the next election. I think for now I will pass the floor back.
Yeah, let me just follow up, Anutin, just a little bit. So you mentioned about the constitutional referendum in August 2016. The turnout, I think, was 59% and 61%, but the approval rate was 59%. Now, this is a big for us. We are so focused on elections in Thailand because it's the only window, viable window, to have a change of government from this military government to an elected government of some kind that represent people. So the big puzzle is that now we could have election actually meandering into 2019. 19. So this would be a 5-year military government now. The constitution itself, a quick question as a follow-up, the way that it's written, do you think it will make much of a difference? I mean, in terms of getting representatives back in power, can you do very much? That's the first question, because if the rules are written, mixed member apportionment, 350, 150, so no big parties will emerge. First question about the rules, are they kind of effective for restoring power to elected representatives? Second, for Bhumjaithai, which is known as a kind of a medium-sized party, do you think these rules are kind of beneficial for Bhumjaithai and other medium and smaller-sized parties?
Try to remember the first question.
The rules are kind of rigged. And if so, does it matter? I mean, when we actually have elections, can you really do much? Can you really make a difference?
Well, I think I had about 15 years in politics, and I have about 25 years in business. So I try to mix my way of thinking and way of making my way forward in both aspects. For me, the Constitution, if it would affect the administration. But sometimes I have to say, let bygone be bygone, because I am not part of the charter drafter. I wasn't invited, despite giving some kind of, I was invited to give comments when they were drafting the first draft. Dr. Bawansak's team and General Ladrat invited. I think we prepared 6-7 pages of comments. And I don't know why it was now. None of the substance was put in. So I assume that the political views or comments have not been paid with any attention. And I think they already have what they wanted to draft. So inviting political bodies in is just only to, complete the process. But all in all, personally, not politically, I don't feel any dissatisfaction in the substance of the charter. In one sense, I appreciated the charter especially in the article of anti-corruption. I think this charter will address very heavily to the people who could come in and hold authority, hold state authority, and if ever they wanted to do any wrongful act, they would have to bear big consequence. It's almost an political execution penalty. Even in the law, it goes to the maximum penalty is to take the capital punishment if people would want to do something wrong. And lately, the trend of people who have not served the country well and try to, pocket themselves from their authority, serving the public, the trends went on that way, went along with what it's said in the Constitution. To me, that is the most important. Style of administration, limitation or any kind of discrepancies of the power of the government, to me is not only secondary, it's probably tertiary. Because the government coming in to take control of the country while it has been in the intensive care unit for a long period of time. I don't think we wanted to make, to fulfill any dream in the short period. I think, if thinking of it naturally, it's good that the concept of the charter might be useful, might be proper for the next coalition government to, I would say coalition government because the charter would lead into that part. To look into the joint track and allow the government to slowly build its base before moving on. In business, you got to have a strong base before, leaping upward. You can't have a weak base and try to make it heavy on top because it's not going to be stable. But in public service, I don't think it makes any much difference because Thailand is the country who is having a very strong base, or else we would not have survived this long. Comparing to other countries experiencing this kind of unrest and turmoil, it would not stay this. It would never be able to stay at this position. So, luckily, this country, the business and the real sector goes on one road. It's like Rama, Pheu, and Sukhumvit. It would never merge. So, I think this is the beauty and uniqueness of this country. Despite having a special kind of regime, the stock market keep growing. The index never dropped. So, basically, it's not that bad. Coming to my political party, of course, people always say that a middle size and a small party, not too small, a small size party would gain from the substance stated in the charter. I will take it if a size of my party, not comparing with these two gentlemen's party, if I would gain, I would take it as a windfall. That doesn't make me change my policy. That doesn't make me change my eagerness to drive the best things that my party would be able to market to our voters. So if it ever made my party become bigger, so I don't thank the charterer. I thank God. I thank myself that I am I am a leader of this party. It's a windfall if I ever make it. But the crucial part is I got to come up with a dependable policy, workable policy, and accessible. So this is very important. And the policy which my party will have to drive it out has to comply with all the limitations and discrepancies provided in the charter. So this is the difficult part, but I think I can make it. We can make it. So let's see. Not long from now. Thank you.
Thank you. I think keyword is windfall, and then also I think now the political parties have not had an opportunity to meet, organize, and discuss policy. So at some other point in time, when the timing is more appropriate, we'll have something on policy platforms. On this stage, except for Ajahn Jade and myself, these three other speakers have been cabinet ministers before. You can see their bios that have been passed out and their backgrounds. Now we come to Kun Korn, Deputy Leader of the Democrat Party. So the Democrat Party is a major party in Thai politics. What's your outlook, Kun Korn? We've heard from Kun Anutin that the economy is pretty resilient. I mean, this is a astonishing economy. You just go through turmoil, color-coded protests, street uprisings, and so on, and shutting down Bangkok for months on end. The economy keeps expanding. Stock market is a record high. So the economy is not going to be the major catalyst that kicks out this government. It looks like you just have to be running out the clock, and there could be delays. What is your outlook? What's the Democrat Party outlook?
Okay, Dr. Thitanan, thank you for that, and thank you for having me here, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, correction. The Dean very generously introduced me as Deputy Leader of the Democrat Party. I haven't been Deputy Leader for about 5 years, and I'm not a member of the ExCom of the party at the moment. I say that because I'm obviously here as a senior member of the Democrat Party, but not on behalf of the Democrat Party. In these days and age, these clarification can turn out to be quite important. Now, I'm also glad that Dr. Thitanan referred to issues related to the economy and to policies, rather than specifically to Kun Yingluck. I think, of course, politics is all about ideology, can be about emotions and sentiment, but primarily, I believe, it should be about issues. And Dr. Thitanan brought up some important issues. Yesterday, I spent most of the day talking to tech innovators, Thai tech innovators, on subjects ranging from, for example, how blockchain and cryptocurrency could change the way we relate to our governments in the future, could change the way how the people relate to their banks and stockbrokers, and how it could affect the efficiency of the broad economy as a whole. We also talked about how other technological developments could address some very important issues that we face as a country. Frankly, not just Thailand, but specifically to Thailand, issues related to how we work with the advent of AI. Most importantly, how we manage our increasingly scarce resources, how we can use technology to manage our water resources other than through water tax, how we use technology to manage our increasing demand for energy other than the need to use coal, and importantly also how we use technology to address some very important structural change that is taking place in our society, not least with relations to aging. how we address the fact that dependency ratio for Thailand at about 5-to-1 at the moment, 5 working Thais against 1 retirees, will collapse to about 2-to-1 in 25 years. Now, these are all important issues and relate to the fact that Thailand is really at a critical junction. Dr. Thitanan correctly points out to what appears to be a resilient economy. But frankly speaking, we're running out of steam that was built on the base of so-called, let me say, Thailand 3.0, which is the industrialization that took place from the early 1980s. So GDP growth has been moribund. And whenever, especially in latter years, GDP growth has picked up, the general public feels that it's not benefiting them, that it is benefiting only a few specific groups. Amidst that, we are also in a period where our neighboring countries, immediate neighbors and near neighbors, are going to be the economic driver for the global economy over the next, frankly, probably several decades. So we're seeing some of the fastest growth rates in countries that we are closest to, both geographically and also economically. And therefore, this presents huge opportunities, something we need to work out and work out quickly. But as I mentioned earlier, we are getting old, and it is very significant in different ways. The average age, for example, of our farmers today is 53, my age, exactly. 20 years ago, the average age of our farmer was 33. That testifies the fact that there are no new farmers. So the question in 10, 15 years is not going to be just related to price of rice. It's going to be bigger than that. Who's going to grow our rice? So issues like that will lead to significant change in the country and awaits some kind of strategic direction. Obviously, we all feel that an important part of the puzzle to all these questions and issues related to how smart Thai people will be, i.e. related directly to our education. This clearly remains the problem. Broad indices such as PISA scores for us, 49 out of 63, I think it's the latest score. Even worse in terms of English capability, TOEFL score 58 out of 63 countries. So we're ranking very low on education at the time when we need education the most. So given that, it is important that we get our politics right, because politics is important. And on these notes, I'm not very pessimistic, but at best I'm cautiously optimistic. I say I'm cautiously optimistic because there are reasons for concern. First of all, most of our internal polls, I'm sure, including the government's poll, would indicate that the level of political divide in the country is at least as great as it was before the coup, i.e. the coup has solved nothing with regards to bringing the people together from a political perspective. If you don't believe me, just wait till you see the election result next year, as Anutin says, hopefully. So that remains an issue. How we manage it, that's something that we politicians particularly need to think about. Another reason why I can only be cautiously optimistic is because over the past decade, and especially over the past 3.5 years, the size of the government and the size of the bureaucracy has expanded exponentially. For me, as an economist, that's not a good thing. The government, by definition, almost any government, is the least efficient operator in society, and yet we're seeing their market share, so to say, grow in almost every segment of society. This parliament alone has passed more than, 200 laws? That's more than any government has passed in the past 50 or 60 years. That to me is not a good thing. In the meantime, if you look at the corporate sector, what I see is status. We have a static corporate sector, and by that I mean if you compare the Thai corporate sector to, say, the American corporate sector, over the past 10 to 15 years, you've seen complete change in leadership of American corporation, from traditional players such as GE and Exxon to tech companies such as Facebook and Google. You've seen change, you've seen a level of dynamism, and that's something that we have not seen here in Thailand. Whoever was a big player 15 years ago is even bigger today. And that, I think, highlights the lack of competition and lack of upward mobility that exists in our corporate sector. And the final reason why I can only be cautiously optimistic is because corruption today is as bad as it ever was. The only good thing I can say about that, from a perspective of a politician, is now Thai people know that you don't need politicians to have corruption. Now, if you look at reasons why I am not so pessimistic, there are equally number of good reasons why that should be the case. And here may I refer to Yingluck a little bit. The recent court case, the way I read it, is that democracy, even in Thailand, works. Basically, the crux of the ruling was that the government is responsible for policy, and is responsible not to the courts, but only to the people. But if the government, or anybody in the government, breaks the law, then it's responsible to the courts. Now, that to me is how liberal democracy should work. In the specific case of Kun Yingluck, she had a policy, it was popular, and the court, from the legal perspective, saw that there was nothing wrong with that. But then she got involved with a scheme that was clearly illegal and did not use her executive power to put a stop to the corruption that was taking place. She was found out by the opposition in Parliament, who filed a complaint through the judicial system, finally reached the court with the verdict that we now all understand. Now, that's exactly the democratic process that took place. Take note of the fact that in none of this process, in no part of this process was the military involved. And in fact, one could say that you don't need a coup in order to arrive at the conclusion that we did in that particular case. The democratic system works. It's about time we get back to it. That leads to the other point, and I refer to Kun Anutin's comment about the Constitution. We have a different set of rules now. The highest law of the land is different from the one that we've been using in the previous 10 years. The two parties, at least, did not support it. At least we're public about not supporting it. But as Kun Anutin correctly pointed out, the majority of the Thai public did. And therefore, I think it's our duty to abide and respect both the spirit and the letter of this Constitution, regardless of what our sentiments are towards it. Now, that might be easier said than done, because it will potentially involve some controversial issues going forward, especially related to how government is formed and how a prime minister is selected post the next election. But I believe, as a general tenet, that if we all respect the rule of the land, if we respect the law, then the political divide that I mentioned clearly remains in Thailand should not be in itself a problem for us to move forward and address the issues the important issues that I referred to. Very briefly, the other reason why I'm not so pessimistic is because these past 3.5 years have allowed me the time to work with and meet some really very brilliant, socially aware, innovative young Thais. Now, this gives me cause for hope. They are in every field, whether it's commerce, education, healthcare, and they're very keen to focus on the changes that they feel this country requires. It's up to us, seniors now, to help create an ecosystem and environment that allows them to do that. And I think we can. And finally, I'm not pessimistic because regardless of all the issues that challenges us, Thailand is obviously in the very sweet spot of where we want to be geographically and socially. Now, that gives us tremendous opportunities, based not least on the rising purchasing power of the billions of people that are near us. So the opportunities are there for us to get out of the existing malaise. It is possible that we get our politics right so that we can affect the necessary policies to do so. Whether we achieve that or not, time will tell. Thank you.
Right on time, congrats. Very quick follow-up. The Democrat Party is the oldest party in Thailand, and in the past it has stood up against military rule before, such as in 1992. This time we've had quite some time of military government since May 2014. Do you think that the military is in now for the long term? I mean, one way or the other, election or no election, there will be some kind of military rule in disguise through the constitution, through the various institutional mechanisms, and is that the case? I mean,
I don't know. But what I will say is that military rule today is very different from military rule 40 years ago. And different still from military rule that you see in other countries where the military has power. It's plainly obvious that our military government is highly sensitive to public sentiment. And to me, that affirms the fact that we are, frankly speaking, even if Thais don't feel it, a deeply democratic country as it is. And I define democratic in terms of our expectation of a certain level of freedom, our expectation in terms of individual rights. And that's something that no military government can dilute, including this one. And so the only remaining question is a technical one, and that is when exactly will they hold an election? But it's an inevitable event from the expectation of all Thais. And I think that's something.
thank you very much. Yeah, that's a good point. We have a military dictatorship, but it's a soft dictatorship. It's a nuanced dictatorship. That's why it's still around. That's why it will last some time.